we talked about the root causes of this issue of Indigenous women experiencing more violence than any other group of people in this country. And I wanted to talk about one of the stories that's always moved me, which is the story of Helen Bendy Osborne. She was 19 years old, studying in Winnipeg, and was brutally raped and murdered by 6 white men. And I don't mean to be racist when I say this. This is what was written. The RCMP and policing authorities knew for 6 years who committed this crime. And this is what they wrote in Stolen Sisters. Helen Bendy Osborne would be alive today had she not been an Indigenous woman. The policing authorities felt they knew of this sort of going on preying on Indigenous women and girls. They said the practice did not necessitate any particular vigilance. And I think that attitude still rings true today, as many policing authorities reserve the right to be questioned in public when it comes to this kind of issue. But the policing authorities have not yet completely, when I say 100%, they should be sensitized and learn about their own colonial history. Last night, Quebec elected the same premier who denies systemic racism exists in this province. The denial of systemic racism perpetuates genocide. A human rights-based approach is needed to address this issue more profoundly. And if you are denying anything, then we will not have justice. If you are denying that Indigenous people do not have the same rights to safety, freedom from torture, freedom from any kind of violence, then you're perpetuating the status quo of over 500 years ago, when 3/4 of the Indigenous population were killed by Europeans in contact. We lost 3/4 of our population because we were Indigenous. And then, on top of that, we have a patriarchal, misogynistic culture that rules us under the Indian Act. And so governments are not re-examining and taking a closer look at the fact that instead of trying to still put us in a box, this colonial box,
they're embarrassed.
and they are embarrassed. And they're trying to commodify the rights of Indigenous people. They are not looking at the gaps that are still there. They have not read the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples. They have not read the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and I don't care what they say on their website.
No.
They are not fulfilling the rights to promote human rights and to do it with equality. Indigenous people, as I said last week, have the right to be different. We have the right to self-determination, and that means protecting our rights. And this is happening. This murder and missing of Indigenous women is all about land, greed, and power. It's evident in the Wet'suwet'en Nation, it's evident in Ganasadaga, it's evident everywhere we go. Because they still want every square inch of our land. The government has an obligation to protect human rights. And Quebec ratified the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. They ratified all those conventions because there are special committees created by the Government of Canada and consults all provinces before they ratify anything.
The government has raped me and killed me! They got nothing to say!
And I hear your frustration because after all this time,
I've been
for the government
raped.
just to put words on paper and not act is a crime against humanity. It's a crime against every one of us, because as long as there is injustice, as long as we do not have our human rights respected, There will be no peace, there will be no justice, there will be no democracy in this country. As long as the government continues to deny that there is a problem, this problem will grow bigger and fester.
The government don't understand fuck all.
No, they don't. They do not understand at all. Simply because it's all about money. It comes down to the bottom line. It comes down to having...
You're not even supposed to talk about money. We're talking about the world.
We're talking about the world, which should be a better place in 2022 than it was in 1971,
You know?
when Helen Betty Osborne was killed.
Yes.
We're talking about a better world where everybody's treated equal, and that Indigenous people's rights and our inherent rights and our human rights are
We're
respected.
not this European can understand to be equal with us. It's been too many years. Enough. Look at that statue. Get me out of here. That's one of them.
If we're to succeed,
I'm not angry.
I
Just
am.
tell the truth. I'm
I'm
just
angry.
telling the truth, the reality. Look at that statue.
The statue is just metal.
Yeah, that's the guy who came here from Europe, came to abuse us First Nations. I'm sorry, okay, I'll bet it off.
That's okay, sister. We have the time to say everything. So this is your time. Success means that there's a level of political support, not denial. So there's an F for Quebec. They failed. Transparency and participating and planning for a national plan of action. Government is still ticking off the boxes and saying there's partnerships, when instead they already have a plan. And they talk to Indigenous people, and they say they're engaging with Indigenous people, but they are not. They're not even consulting Indigenous people. And then they expect us to be happy with the crumbs that they feed us.
Not even.
They expect us to be happy that they are not teaching their children in their schools their colonial genocidal history. They expect us to be happy with a day, 2 days. They expect us to be happy with announcements where they pat themselves on the back that they've done something. And yet they drag their feet every chance they get, and they are gatekeepers within this bureaucratic culture of unelected people who are the ones who are preventing any kind of justice happening. Judges, lawyers, teachers, social workers, psychiatrists, psychologists, everyone should know their history so this problem can stop.
Yeah,
Every one of us feels the multi-generational impacts of colonization. Every one of us should feel ashamed that there has been very little movement in regards to how Indigenous women who go murdered or missing are treated, and those families. Every single Indigenous woman and child is at threat because of the inaction, the apathy, the denial of systemic racism by government officials. There is no place for complacency. There is no place for the perpetuation of this genocidal project that started over 500 years ago. We are fed up, as you heard my sister say. We're fed up. We want to see more people march with us, and we want more people to get on the backs of the Minister of Education of every single province and territory in this country and implement all the education of this genocidal project that still continues today. If Indigenous women did not speak out for the inequalities from the beginning, we would be further behind. If Indigenous women did not push this at the United Nations, we would be further behind. Because as far as Canada and people like Premier Legault are concerned, they can push this under the carpet. They don't have to deal with it and pretend that it's our problem, that colonization is our problem, that the greed and power that they hide behind is our problem, and that they can hide behind a crown and say it's crown land. and that it's our problem if we do not like that status. It's time for that to stop, and we need all your help. So I really appreciate all of you being here. I really appreciate the organizers for putting this together. We need to mobilize everybody. If you are a teacher, put this in your classes and bring Indigenous people into your classes. If you are a psychologist, bring this into your association and have them bring it into the discussions. If you are a bureaucrat, implement those calls to action. Implement those rights, those human rights that each and every single one of us are worthy of, our dignity. That means something. That is something we are born with, that nobody, nowhere, no matter how smart or what level of political power you have, can take that away from you. That's our dignity. As far as the National Plan of Action is concerned, and the hundreds of pages that we need to read through, which probably nobody is interested in because they repeat themselves. I don't know who wrote that. But we need to bring to light this problem, not just today, but every day. And all those Indigenous children in unmarked graves who have their descendants living through this problem because we're Indigenous. This is Indigenous land. This is the place of our ancestors where they sang social songs, where they made babies, where they loved, where they shared, where they acknowledged each other's humanness. It didn't have to be from the Ganyakahaga nation, every nation. And we did that for the Europeans who arrived. We acknowledged their humanity. Over 500 years now, we're waiting for you to recognize our humanity and respect it. Please. One day, maybe society will, because society's indifference means that the politicians and the cowards of the corporations, they can hide behind you. So let's make this just one of the many steps we're going to take towards justice. So now, thank you. That's the whole sadat. Thank you for listening to me. Merci de m'attendre.
Do you guys see why I want to be yelling when I grow up? Okay. So, just another reminder, juste pour vous rappeler qu'on a des breuvages chauds au pied du monument. Just at the foot of the monument, there's some hot beverages for anyone who's starting to feel a little chilly. For now, we're going to listen to a few more drum songs. You guys want to do that? Alors, avant de procéder à la marche, pour ce soir, dans le fond, c'est ça. Alors, nous allons partir d'ici. Vous avez sûrement vu l'itinéraire un peu. Nous allons partir d'ici pour éventuellement arriver à la Compagnie de la Baie. Et puis, en route, nous allons faire quelques arrêts. On va entendre d'autres personnes extrêmement excellentes que j'aime beaucoup du fond de mon cœur. Alors, merci d'être là encore. So just to go over tonight's itinerary, so we're going to listen to a few more songs by Traveling Spirit. Spirit Drum. What is it? Traveling Spirit. Okay, got it. So we're going to listen to a few more songs from Traveling Spirit. And so we're going to be leaving from here and we'll be marching down to eventually end up at the bay. And along the way, we're going to make a few stops and listen to just absolutely powerful people that I adore. So thank you again for being here this evening, and it really means a lot to me and to our community in general. This is not only just important, but it's sad that we have to have these events.
It is important.
And a lot of us Indigenous women here at one point or another have felt threatened by the system, thank you Lissy, or by anything. I myself am a survivor of family violence, and for the first time ever I'm saying this publicly. In therapy, I tapped into like a really, really deep part of my psyche, and I was raped as a child by a family member, and I'm still dealing with that. And so, you know, this is too common, and so again, I really appreciate that you're here. Chaque femme autochtone qui est ici sur place s'est sentie menacée à un point ou à un autre. Je suis une survivante de violence familiale et une survivante de viol. Et donc, au nom de mes sœurs, mes cousines, mes tantes, merci d'être là. And on behalf of my sisters, my cousins, and my aunts, thank you so much for being here. Now over to Traveling Spirit.